Good evening. Welcome to the Ames Public Library this evening. I am Anessa, and I'm very pleased to welcome you tonight, both in person and virtually, for this program, which is part of the 2025 History Lecture Series, brought to you through a partnership with the Ames Public Library and the Ames History Museum. The library's mission is to connect you to a world of ideas, which we do through diverse and inclusive resources and programming like tonight's event. For those with us in person, this room is equipped with an induction loop for the benefit of hearing aid users. To use, please switch your hearing aid to T. We also have a hearing assisting device that we can lend you for the evening, and please let me know if you would like to use this. For those with us virtually, we have enabled live captioning. If you are not seeing captions, turn them on by clicking the CC Live Transcript button in the Zoom menu bar at the bottom of your screen, and then select Close Captioning. For all participants, today's session is being recorded and will be posted on the Ames History Museum's YouTube channel after the event. You can also find the link to that video as well as a list of suggested reading related to tonight's theme if you want to learn more. You can find these at amespubliclibrary.org/history lectures. And I will also share that link in the chat. We will have time for questions at the end. Please make sure that you speak your questions into a microphone for the benefit of our listeners at home. If you are on Zoom this evening, please place your questions into the chat to be read by a staff member. With that, I will turn it over to Casey Vance, who's going to introduce tonight's speaker.
Hi, I'm Casey. I'm the Executive Director at Ames History Museum, and I want to echo that welcome to our lecture series program tonight. It's great to have such a great partnership with Ames Public Library and be able to offer our lecture series both in person and virtually. Our mission at the museum is to engage our diverse public and provide unique opportunities to learn about Ames history. We recently reopened in October of last year after a big expansion and renovation project. And we now have 2 exhibit galleries, community gathering spaces, a reading and research room, and on-site storage for artifact and archival collections. Our current feature exhibit is Quilted Together, which includes 10 quilts from our collection with Ames stories. So I encourage you to come to the museum to see that if you haven't already. Tonight's lecture is the 3rd in a series of 4 lectures in the series. Please visit our website, ameshistory.org, for more information about upcoming events, current exhibits, and museum membership. And I wanted to make one miscellaneous announcement tonight that we recently gave Charity Nebby with Iowa Public Radio a tour of the museum and did an interview with her for Talk of Iowa, and that will air this coming Tuesday at 10 o'clock on Iowa Public Radio, and we have a whole hour slot. So if you want to, hear more about the museum and take kind of an audio tour, be sure to tune into that. And now I'll pass it over to Kathy Speck, who helps organize the lecture series.
We had a lot of fun with Charity. That was really an unusual event for us, and we're so pleased to have the story of the Ames History Museum going out to the whole state of Iowa. I'm so pleased to introduce Eric Wittrock, and he is tonight's worthy stand-in for Bob Lindemeyer, who originally developed this lecture and was due to deliver it until his doctor advised otherwise. And we're disappointed that Bob can't be here. But he did develop this program, and Eric is using that as the basis of his talk, and he's got some personal anecdotes to add to the story. But we're so glad that Eric could come up from Urbandale to step in for Bob. Now, Eric is originally from Northwest Iowa, Spirit Lake, and Ocheadon, and he attended Iowa State University as a 3rd-generation cyclone studying mechanical engineering. And here's the fun part about Eric. His grandfather played the bells of Iowa State and wound the clock mechanism starting in 1920, when there were only 10 bells. So it would seem that he was destined to be here telling this story tonight. While at Iowa State from 1987 to 1991, Eric studied the Carillon under Richard von Grabow, and I think some of you probably would remember von Grabow. For 2 semesters during college, he studied and played the Carillon at the Washington Memorial Chapel in Valley Forge National Park outside Philadelphia. Eric's family has a rich tradition with Iowa State. He has followed his grandfather, mother, and sister at Iowa State, and he married a Cyclone that he met at ISU's varsity marching band. And his daughter graduated from Iowa State just 2 years ago in 2023. Now, Eric has been a board member for the ISU Alumni Association and, most importantly, the Stanton Memorial Carillon Foundation. So please welcome Eric. Thank you.
I think it sounds like the audio is working good, so I can move around. Thank you for being here this evening, and I'm going to try to do Bob's presentation justice. I have given it twice before, so I will be referring to the notes occasionally because, and I will probably throw in some anecdotes as well if you want to know. Yes, she didn't mention a personal thing about me is my daughter went to the dark side after she left Iowa State, and she is at the University of Iowa studying medicine. But Linda Winterstein was the one that told her she was going to the dark side. So, but anyway, you are probably familiar with how important the Campanile is, and the Stanton Carillon inside the Campanile are to Iowa State. It's on everything, right? Everything that's Iowa State has a picture of the Campanile on it. We've always preferred to refer to them ourselves as the Bells of Iowa State. So we want to talk today about how this wonderful tradition began. And it was the idea of an extraordinary man named Edgar William Stanton. So this is Edgar Stanton as a new grad. He was born in 1850, and when he graduated in the first class of Iowa State College in 1872. He was then hired by the university or the college at the time to teach math. Edgar went on to dedicate his entire professional life to Iowa State. He was a professor of mathematics. This is a later picture of him. He kept his hair a little bit better than I did, apparently. He was the dean of the junior college, and on 4 occasions, he was the acting president of Iowa State. He was the founder of the Iowa State Alumni Association and longtime secretary of the Board of Trustees. In 1877, 5 years after he graduated, he married a young faculty member, Margaret Price McDonald. This is Margaret about the time they got married. And for a few years, they lived here. And this is Old Main. I don't know how long Old Main survived, but I never saw it when I was at Iowa State in the 80s. But is where the students all lived in Old Main, and it was Soren and Edgar and Margaret were kind of the house parents of this building at the time. Margaret was promoted to preceptress of the college, and she was defined as a female teacher and moral leader of the college. Later, Edgar and Margaret moved here. This is the Maples. It was an elegant home, and they were a very popular couple with both the faculty and the students at the college. In 1885, they had these 2 children, Edwin and daughter Margaret. But within 10 years of this photo, she died on July 25th, 1895, at the age of 49 years old. So at that point, they did have 3 children under the age of 16, and everyone mourned at their passing because they were the center for most of the students and faculty at the time. Later, they built a new women's dormitory. And that was under construction in 1895 when she died. And they named it Margaret Hall after her. So this is a picture of Margaret Hall that they named in her memory. Edgar wrote to the board after her death and announced the gift of a chime of 10 bells in memory of Margaret. He requested that they build, to house those bells, he requested that they build a tower to house them. They agreed, and the Campanile was completed in 1898, 3 years after her death. This is the early Campanile. You can see there's no clock faces yet, and there are no bells. This tower was completed at the grand total cost of $6,510.20. So these are the first 10 bells that were up there, called the Margaret Chime in her honor. So, they were thought to be the first scientifically tuned bells in America, and some say in the world. They were cast and tuned at the Taylor Bell Foundry. And these are the 10 bells that my grandfather played when he was there in 1920. Was announced in the introduction, he saw a thing about an opportunity to make some money. So he went up and found out that you had to wind the clock twice a day because it was manual, and you had to play for 20 minutes a day, or like 20 minutes each time. There were only 10 bells. So he could play very simple chimes. It was not a campanile, it was not a carillon, it was ropes on the wall. And he pulled these 10 ropes. And I know all this stuff because of his memoirs. I didn't actually, I was like 10 when he died. So, but I read this all in his memoirs, and my mom remembers the stories as well. But the Taylor Bell Foundry was in Loughborough, England. The bells, those 10 bells, cost $4,271, 2/3 the price of the Campanile. So his gift actually was like, I'll give you these bells and you build this big tower, but they were still valued almost as much as the construction of the tower. They were shipped to Ames, arriving here in December 1899, so 126 years ago. Here's another early view of the Campanile and looking at the space around it. The president of the college in 1899 was William Beardshire. And Dean Stanton then selected the site where the Campanile was built on Central Campus with open space all around. As you all know today, if you've been on campus, that space remains sacred trust and is important to the sound of the bells. I play bells other places in the world that don't have this, and it doesn't sound the same at the University of Michigan because there's buildings all over the place, right around the bell tower. So Central Campus had lawnmowers back in the early 1900s. So this is from 1905, and a herdsman with his flock on Central Campus. The chime players early on were originally students. Again, there was only 10 bells, right? And among them was a young man named Seaman Knapp. And this young woman, Laura Storms. So there are buildings named Storms and Knapp. They were the daughter of Albert Storms, and Seaman Knapp would become the 6th president of Iowa State. They became good at playing the bells and playing duets, and they were married a few years later. So they had a little bell magic. In December 1899, right after the bells arrived, and 4 years after his wife had passed away, Edgar married a woman named Julia Wench. This picture is about 1907, they believe, and they had a daughter, Barbara. So Barbara's about probably about 4 years old in that picture. Julia was a faculty member in math as well, just like Edgar had been originally, and at one point had been Professor Stanton's secretary. So we can imagine how that might happen today and might not have been great, but back then, that's what happened. That's what they did. Here's the flu in 1918. So this is at the armory, or no, this is at State Gym. State Gym became an infirmary when the influenza epidemic happened. Edgar Stanton was infected during the flu. Although weakened, he carried on in part because of how World War I had affected the college. He thought he had to stay involved. By 1919, this photo was taken at Christmas. Julia Wench and the Stanton family are in this photo. With all of the children and spouses as well. So this was Christmas 1919. Julia Wench died just 9 months later. So she died in 1920. They were married 21 years. Yes. This is a close-up of her from the family photo above. Julia and the children handled Edgar's will, which included a $24,000 bequest. Oh, I guess it's Edgar died 9 months later. I'm sorry, not Julia. Edgar died 9 months later in 2020 or 1920. Julia and the children included a $24,000 bequest to Iowa State College. They chose with that bequest to purchase 26 additional bells in 1920. And then in 1920, but they placed the order in 1928. Took them that long to place the order for the bells. The day she placed the order in 1928, she herself went to the beauty parlor in the Memorial Union. And she suffered a massive heart attack that day and died, right after she had ordered the bells for his bequest. So then, when the bells arrived in August 1929, this is Herman Knapp. As you can see, the bells they ordered then were much larger. They had $28,000 to spend, so they got these much larger bells. Herman Knapp was the business college of business manager at that time. Here are the bells being installed by hiking them up through a wooden scaffolding. You notice that some of the biggest bell, I think, weighs a little over 2,000 pounds, I believe. I don't exactly remember. But this is October 6th, 1929. They celebrated the premiere of the Edgar W. and Margaret McDonald Stanton Memorial Carillon. So at this point, it was an instrument, and I'll show you a picture of it if you've never seen the Carillon instrument. 15,000 people came to hear that dedication concert. And it was played by this man. This was Belgian bellmaster Anton Breeze. So you can see the instrument here. This is the same instrument that I played into 1992. And the light was not much better than that. I will tell you. And part of the things that you'll notice too is, see, there's up the center, there's a mechanical mechanism and a set of gears, and there's a rod above his head. There was 4 rods with a gear mechanism to the clocks until they renovated it starting in 1992. I could reach up when I played and put my hand around the rod even. And it was painted a very ugly pale green, that I will tell you. A year later, in August 1931, Ira Schrader was hired as Iowa State's first carillonneur. He remained at Iowa State for 38 years. So he was not done until 1969. He played thousands of carillon concerts, making a significant contribution to the enduring tradition of bells of Iowa State. So my mother came to Iowa State in 1950. She is 93 and a half. She moved yesterday to Storm Lake, Iowa. But when I was growing up, she told me this history and she wanted me to play the bells. And I said, well, Mom, how come you didn't play the bells? And she goes, well, women didn't do that sort of thing. It wasn't allowed. was what she tried to tell me in the 1950s. And then I didn't even realize that unless you played the bell lyre or threw a baton, you were not allowed to be in the Iowa State marching band until the 70s. Was how long it took until the marching band was integrated to co-ed. So she wanted me to play. My mom still plays the organ and the piano, but she wasn't allowed to play the carillon. Jim Wilson, this is Jim Wilson piano. Jim Wilson wrote the Bells of Iowa State. So it was the same year that Ira came, Jim completed the song, The Bells of Iowa State. And if the technology works out, we're going to show you a video later that talks about why he wrote the Bell of Iowa State and how that came about. Here's Ira at the keyboard. In about 1936, Ira became one of the founders of the Guild of Carillonneurs of North America, a group that still meets today. On 2 different occasions, he hosted the annual Congress here at Iowa State. Following his retirement in 1969, Bruce Eberly became the carillonneur for 2 years, and he did that until 1971. And then Marilyn Anderson took over the bells, the first woman carillonneur at Iowa State. She played the carillon for a couple of years, and then she returned, it says here, in 1991, and I actually don't remember this, even though I was on campus. I played the carillon a lot when Dick was retiring and moving on. And then she played it in 1991 after Von Grabo retired. Von Grabo was the 3rd longest serving carillonneur. He was here 18 years. Dr. Von Grabo taught many students to play the bells. He was a very popular faculty member. The students dubbed him Dr. Dingbat, being the sound the bells makes, and bat being the creature who resides in a tower. And he was very good. We didn't have the internet back then. We didn't have cell phones, but he would call people and help me get to play. I got to play the George Washington Cathedral in Georgetown. I got to play Barton Tower at the University of Michigan. I got to play the highest number of bells in Birmingham, Michigan at the Presbyterian Church there. And he while I was co-oping for Ford Motor Company, he helped me get connected with the band that I took lessons from then while I was co-oping, and got to play the Washington Chapel at Valley Forge National Park, which was phenomenal to keep playing while I was out and about. And Dick was great. It helped me make those connections with people. We didn't really have email at the time, so he just made phone calls on my behalf. This is an early picture of Tin-Shi Tam. And she is the story that is still today. She's been Iowa State's carillonneur since 1994. She has performed countless carillon recitals all over the world. She's been an innovator in using the web for podcasts and daily concerts. She got famous years ago for playing Lady Gaga and posting it on YouTube in order to bring more interest in the Campanile. She trained many, many students in the art of carillon, being a carillonneur. These are 4 siblings. They're named the Cunninghams. They all studied under Tin-Shi Tam. They were from Spencer, Iowa. The Cunninghams played the carillons as a quartet, which is hard to do, in 2016, and were featured in the spring issue of Visions magazine, which is the Iowa State University Alumni magazine, or was. In 1999, Tin-Shi hosted the Congress of the Guild of Carillonneurs here at Iowa State, the one that Ira Schrader was one of the founders of. In 2004, they released a CD of her playing the bells. There's a cover of the CD. You can still buy those today, I think, if you have a CD player at the bookstore or as part of the book. There's a book now, and they include the CD with it. Tin-Shi will be the first person to tell you that recording this CD was difficult. there's a few trains that go through town every day, if you've noticed. But they also chose to record at night because then the buses aren't running. Because then you can get better. You don't have to hear a diesel bus going by and avoid the traffic. But when you play at night, you also wake up crows. And then you get to hear the birds. So that are roosting in the trees. So it was sometimes, and still as the recording was interrupted by a train, they'd have to stop and start over. At least they're only a mile or so long, right? Those trains are forever. Crowning achievement of Tinchi, who is still the Carillon newer, is working on the model Campanile Carillon. I don't know if any of you have seen this. It resides in the lobby of Sukup. Thank you. Bio something building or something. But I worked on this as an advisor because it was designed and supported by the mechanical engineering department at Iowa State, of which I graduated from. So I was there for the presentations and helped them advise on some things to make this. So it was really a collaboration effort. The College of Design helped work on the design of the whole thing. It cranks up and they put panels on the side and there's all the bells at the bottom. It's a beautiful instrument. You can see here's a picture of the bells. They're very flat bells because they had to be compact. They have to be able to move it around with a pallet jack. You know, this thing can travel all over the country. First time I saw it, first time it was ever played publicly was in Chicago at the Guild of Carillonneurs event a few years ago. I was there on a college visit with my daughter in the University of Chicago. But is it fully functional and portable 27 bell Carillon? It was designed over 4 years by senior students in the capstone engineering courses and with the guidance of faculty, and the Meeks and Watson Bell Foundry made these bells. It took $190,000 to build this model, which is a little more than the $10,000 for the first 10 bells and the tower. But it premiered on October 27th, 2019 at a gala university concert celebrating the bells of Iowa State. Now we're going to go back in history again. This is Margaret Stanton Kirschman, Edgar and Margaret's daughter. So their daughter founded the Stanton Memorial Carillon Foundation, of which I've been a member for many, many years, in 1954, and she was its first president. In 1956, the foundation then purchased the final 13 bells. So at that point, it became a 50 Carillon, 52? I don't remember. I can't add them up in my head. But these are the new treble bells. That's Ira Schrader there. And Frank Godfrey, who was the Taylor Foundry's chief engineer. So you can see they went, the second set of bells was big bells and the third set of bells was small bells. This is the logo of the Stanton Memorial Carillon Foundation. It's been instrumental of supporting the Carillon and its Carillonneurs. The university has been in charge of the tower for a long time, and then we're just concerned with the instrument itself. The leadership of this still today is a descendant of the Stanton Foundation, of the Stanton family, I'm sorry. Either the Stantons, McDonald's, or Knapp families are the people mostly involved with this group. Well, has anybody ever kissed under the Campanile? Did you do it at midnight or some other time? Oh, then you're not going to like my story. So close your ears. This is the part I said there was some adult stuff here, but you guys are okay. You'll appreciate this. We don't know when the kissing tradition started at Iowa State. If anybody in this room knows, please enlighten me. But the legend says that to become an official Iowa State co-ed, you must be kissed under the Campanile at midnight, which maybe my wife and I should hang out and go over there at midnight. We've never stayed up that late, I guess. Had to do it at the stroke of midnight. And I will tell this story. When I was there in the 80s and 90s, the time to practice, you could practice from 10 p.m. to midnight. A lot of interesting things happen on campus at midnight. But I knew that there were people kissing under the Campanile. And what at midnight. And back then you could not turn off the Westminster chimes. So when it was midnight, you just heard a mechanical sound and it started. So I had about 2 seconds to know what was happening. So I tried to time whatever I was playing to end about then. But I also knew that it used the bottom B flat in order to ring midnight 12 times. So I would just keep timing, get in rhythm with it. And after it hit 12, I'd hit 13, 14. One time it was 26 o'clock. And I got a standing ovation when I got to the bottom because they all got extra kissing time out of the deal. So I would play the bottom B flat for how many ever times I would feel like it. And it was usually a Friday or Saturday when I was doing this. I knew I had a bigger audience. And I was probably had some girl up there trying to impress her, which usually was not impressive to her. But and then I'd always play the Bells of Iowa State and I'd be done because you weren't supposed to play after midnight. So I'd play till 12:05 and it was over. So the way Dick Graylow told me, and this is just the way he told me, I didn't make this up. He said, if the newly kissed girl was a virgin, a brick would fall from the Campanile. But he confirmed with me that no bricks ever fell, so I'm not judging, I'm just saying that was what he told me. I should ask my mom about whether she could sneak out in the 50s at that time of night and even go on Central Campus. There was a curfew, right? Yeah, she lived in like Freeman or something in old RCA, I think, so. I don't know. I'll have to ask her that story when I see her this week. This is in the 90s, there were budget cuts across the university and the bells went silent after Dick retired in 1991. He wasn't replaced right away, which is why I remember that I had to play a lot of noon concerts back then. The Campanile and the Carillon needed a renovation by this time. I'm telling you, it was dire. There was an air conditioning unit, but it was like a wall air conditioner and you turned it off and you had to open a hatch in order to hear you play the bells because there was a metal hatch in the roof. And if it was any temperature at all, you're in this little 8x8 by 6.5 foot high room that would heat up immediately. And because you had to open it up anyway to hear. So it needed a renovation that was going to cost several $100,000. A local Dick's jockey, Ken McLeod, many of you remember this, locked himself in the Campanile for 5 days with the goal of raising $10,000 so we could hire a part-time Carillon. And he succeeded, and more importantly, got national media attention for it. And the Iowa State Foundation partnership, ISU Foundation's Partnership for Promise campaign took up the cause then and to raise funds for the restoration, but also $1 million endowment to maintain the Campanile in perpetuity and the bells of Iowa State. And a large gift was supported by the county family for that, to support a full-time Carillon's position. So Tin Shee's position is backed by an endowment. In 1992, the restoration was underway. If you remember, if you were here, the roof was green. I mean, everything that was copper turned green because of the sulfur in the air from the coal-fired power plant, right? So it had to get new roof, new terracotta, cornices, everything was new. They reconfigured all the bells and put in a new keyboard to do this. So everything was gutted out of it and new. September 25th, 1994, they had a rededication ceremony for the bells. In addition to the Carillon recital program, it included an introduction of Tin Shee Tam at that ceremony. And Jim Wilson, who wrote the Bells of Iowa State, also talked about that. And this is the part we're going to see if it works. I get help, technical support here. Edgar Stanton maybe never realized what a wonderful and doing symbol this gift of love would grow to become for Iowa State University. I mean, everybody knows about the bells. At my daughter's college graduation, they play the Bells of Iowa State, we stand up. Now, not very many people did, but we stand up to play, sing the Bells of Iowa State. So what we're happy is that it'll keep ringing in our hearts for a long time.